Hello, welcome to another edition of Women in Film's Laptop Cinema Club, the series where we bring you compelling conversations with talented filmmakers. Today, we're excited to talk with the creators and subjects behind the powerful and gripping documentary, Belly of the Beast, which was featured on PBS's Independent Lens and was a Women in Film recipient of a 2019 Film Finishing Fund grant. Before I introduce you to today's moderator and guest, let's watch the film's trailer.
There is a culture of secrecy in California.
I have some fear. What kind of repercussions will I get for coming on and talking about this?
I've always been a fighter, but it wasn't truly birthed until I was in prison.
I did a pelvic exam.
He said I had a fibroid.
I was told that I had cancer cells.
When I came out, I felt like something was wrong.
We were getting hundreds of letters about medical abuses every month.
When was the first time a doctor told you that you may be missing your ovaries?
No one ever told me that.
I had been intentionally sterilized, and I had been lied to.
The law prohibits sterilizing people in prison for the purpose of birth control, but they were doing it anyway.
One of the challenges with this story is you ultimately have to get to intent. And then that's what the doctor said, well, that's cheaper than welfare.
I was looking at these documents that was confirming as a Black woman, my life wasn't shit. What's going on? I was very much intimidated by whom I was going up against.
The state has admitted that they have done these illegal surgeries, but we don't actually know who they did them on.
Humans become numbers. They don't get names. And that's what makes it easy to abuse them. Women in California being coercively sterilized is absolutely revolting.
After all this pain, I'll never be the same.
We have yet to get an apology. We have yet to be acknowledged. The state has to be made accountable.
'Cause some wounds never heal. Do you see what you've done?
Thank you for sticking with us during those tech issues. Before I introduce you to today's moderator and guest, let's just remind ourselves as we go into this conversation about the sensitivity regarding some of these issues. We do want you to know that we will be taking your questions, or rather the panelists will be taking your questions at the end of their conversation, but we want everyone to remain respectful. So please be aware of that before we get started. And now to introduce you to the people that we have joining us today, there's four incredible folks. Kelly Dillon is a City of Los Angeles Commissioner and co-chair of Empowerment Congress the Southeast, in addition to the executive director of the nonprofit Back to the Basics. Cynthia Chandler is a prison industrial complex abolitionist and attorney who co-founded Critical Resistance and Justice Now. Angela Tucker, producer on the film, is a writer, director, and Emmy-nominated producer who works in narrative and documentary formats. And Erica Cohn is a Peabody, Emmy, and DGA award-winning filmmaker who was recognized by Variety as one of the 10 documentary filmmakers to watch in 2017. Finally, our moderator for today is Renee Bracey Sherman, a reproductive justice activist, abortion storyteller, strategist, and writer, and the founder and executive director of We Testify, an organization dedicated to the leadership and representation of people who have abortions and share their stories at the intersection of race, class, and gender identity. Again, we'll be taking your questions at the end of their conversation, so please post them using the Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom window. And thank you. Now I'm going to turn it over to Renee and our wonderful guests.
Awesome. Thank you so much to Women in Film for hosting this amazing conversation. To everyone, I'm just so excited. As we were in our little green room talking about the film, I was saying that I first saw it a year ago. I got a screener of it, and it was just one of those films that really, really moved me. As a reproductive justice activist, I see a lot of documentaries about reproductive injustices. And I think sometimes they don't always portray the folks who they're spotlighting their stories in an empowering light. And I think what was really amazing about Belly of the Beast is the way that folks who experience this deep injustice from the state of California, from the prison system, were really centered, were really humanized, and just the way their stories were told in such a powerful way that they shared it themselves. I thought was just so exciting and so beautiful. And I really thought that the film brings home what is reproductive justice. And for folks who don't know, I just want to share a little bit about what reproductive justice is. It's not a synonym for abortion or reproductive rights or reproductive health. It is a human rights framework that centers the lived experiences and reproductive freedom for marginalized folks, particularly folks of color, and really looks at what systems we have in this nation and around the world that are prohibiting people from being able to live their best lives and to decide if, when, and how to have a child, maybe not have a child, and to be able to parent their children with dignity and respect. And part of that, I think people often think of, only abortion or only contraception, but don't really look at the way that reproductive injustices impact particularly Black and Brown folks to keep them from having children, often in coerced situations. And that is something that has happened throughout history here in the United States and around the world. A lot of people think about forced sterilization as something that happened a long time ago, isn't really a thing now, but it's actually happening as recently as just a couple of months ago in ICE detention centers under the Trump administration in Georgia. And if it wasn't for a number of the nurses who worked at those detention centers, we may not have been able to hear some of those stories until it was way too late to be able to stop it and do something about it. So I'm really excited. If you haven't seen Belly of the Beast, I really hope that you take some time to watch it right after this. And I'm really excited to get into this conversation. So would actually just like to start with Angela and Erica. You both made the film, and I'd love to hear a little bit about what inspired you to make the film. How did you two meet and start collaborating? Tell us the meet cute story that created this film.
You go first, Erica, and then I'll.
I was going to say, do you want to go first?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, we do have a meet cute story, and we call it a meet cute story. But Erica, which she'll talk more about this, was working on the film for several years, and the producer that was on the film was about to have a baby, and she was looking for a new producer, and had heard about me from a mutual friend. And we were both at Sundance Film Festival that year, and Erica was like, we should get together and talk about this film. And I was kind of like, sure. I mean, I was looking to kind of transition out of producing, but I said, okay, this is interesting. Why not, meet up with her? And then I saw, footage from the film later. She told me that it was, about forced sterilizations happening in prisons in California. But really why I knew I had to be a part of the film was I saw footage of Kelly testifying. And the line that's in the trailer, which is, as a Black woman, my life wasn't shit. That was the line that made me knew I needed to work on this film, because I just knew it was just going to be something special, and it was going to, really create some change. But Erica will walk you through the multiple year journey before I joined the film, I guess 4 years ago now.
I also just want to say, I mean, the cute story, I mean, we were totally set up, and it goes just to the power of our filmmaking community and the power of our film festivals, you know, and to be able to both be, you know, alumni of Sundance and to meet in that way. I mean, I had been hearing about Angela for years, and our mutual friend who set us up as filmmaking partners, you know, was waiting for the right moment to approach Angela. So it just happened to be that year, and what an amazing collaboration. And also have to just say thank you to Women in Film for nurturing these relationships and for nurturing this film, I mean, and championing this incredible film. And all of us, I mean, the four of us have been collaborators on this project in you know, for the better part of the decade, of this past decade. And it's pretty awesome to have the dream team on a conversation with you, Renee, you know, supported by Women in Film today. So it was 2010 when I was introduced to Cynthia through a mutual friend. And I was really inspired by Cynthia's organization that she co-founded, Justice Now, which was one of the only organizations in the country, if not the only organization in the country, that had board members who are currently incarcerated, who are really informing strategy from the inside out, as opposed to the outside in, like so many organizations work. And they had this campaign called the Let Our Families Have a Future campaign, which essentially exposed the multiple ways that prisons destroy the basic fundamental human right to family. One of the most heinous, of course, being the illegal sterilizations, primarily targeting women of color. And to me, that immediately screamed eugenics. You know, as a Jewish woman, the phrase "never again" was always profoundly in the back of my mind. And when I learned about this different kind of genocide that was happening through imprisonment, through forced sterilizations behind bars, I knew that I wanted to get involved. And Cynthia invited me into the organization as a volunteer, where I became a volunteer legal advocate, providing direct services for over 150 people inside California's women's prisons. And from there, we began collaborating on a project that ultimately would become Belly of the Beast. And of course, you know, this collaboration would not have happened without Cynthia and Kelly at the forefront, you know, as advisors behind the scenes, as well as, you know, being the main kind of protagonist in this film. But I think it's very unique to have this kind of cross collaboration that we had with people who are currently incarcerated every step of the way, you know, from, you know, how the film would look and feel and how to recreate moments, which we can get into later. But also, you know, decisions about who to bring on as the musical voice of the film, Mary J. Blige. So excited to talk more about this unique collaboration that the four of us had.
So that actually is something that was really powerful. So I used to live in the Bay Area, and I came to know about the organization Justice Now through a lot of my reproductive justice organizing, and it really shifted my understanding of like the incarceration system, and just like how massive it was that the sterilization was happening, and the way that they're structured. At the time, I didn't know any other organizations that had the people who were closest to the work in the seats of power, in decision making, driving it. And I thought that was just really fascinating, and have wanted to see that in so many organizations going forward in my work. And I see this now in the film too, right? So I would love, Kelly and Cynthia, like, can you talk about what it was like for both of you to be participants in the film, but also be involved behind the scenes in an advisory role, and what that process was like?
You first.
It's always like DJ Cassidy, pass the mic. Huh? Okay, so hello everyone. Thank you, Women in Film. Thank you, Miss Renee, for this conversation. It's a blessing and a privilege to be here. and especially among my sisterhood. So thank you so much, the team, the Belly of the Beast team. But I'm gonna give it to you from 2 points of view before I pass it over to Cynthia. First of all, I want to say that I think it was honorable that Erica and Angela allowed us to have a voice and to have a creative, some form of creative control about what the content was, how we were presented, and also how the picture of what we wanted to bring to the table. Sometimes people just look at subjects as subjects and you stay in a subject's lane, but Erica and Angela didn't do that. So I'm thankful that they were able to allow us to even participate. Second of all, I'm controlling anyway. There's a level of controllingness that I have based on the trauma that I've been through and just trying to make sure that I'm protecting myself and that, I'm trying to shield myself from any more disappointment or harm. But, and so therefore I was like, no, you can't do it like, no, you should do it like this. But we developed since the journey in this film was so long, how can not a friendship develop, right? So friendships developed over time. And therefore the trust also increased among us. So we were able to say, okay, then, here and there. But it wasn't until Erica gave me the first edit of the film that I was talking to Erica about like, nah, I think we need to hit this a little harder. We need to, we need to show how America or, people respond to people in prison and what their thoughts are really like really put that prejudiceness, that discrimination in the face, back in their face. And this is what you said, and this is the people who you said it about, that these people have lives and stuff like that. So I appreciate that. So I'm gonna hand it over to I'm gonna pass it over to Cynthia. Pass the mic to Cynthia.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. It does always feel like we get to be reunited as the dream team when we get together in these Zoom events. So, and Kelly's right, we did all forge really strong relationships and friendships through this whole process. And frankly, had Erica not been willing to really divert from typical filmmaking process, and had she not been willing to embed herself in the whole campaign and the movement and really genuinely be part of the movement, this film could not have been made because as you described, Justice Now is really an organization driven by people inside, led by people inside, inclusive of people inside. And for me, being a person with the privilege of freedom, I felt and still feel incredibly protective of people inside around being treated and portrayed in inappropriate manners and really taken advantage of, right? So when Erica first came to me, it was like, oh, I heard about this campaign. I would love to document it. I'd love to follow this campaign. My instinct was, come be a part of this campaign. Let us see what you film. Maybe something you film could be useful for something else. Maybe you could contribute. And it was really her perseverance and really she had to persevere because I was kind of like, and go over there and leave me alone. First, her perseverance and her demonstration of enormous integrity and commitment is what then made me feel comfortable about opening up the doors to leaders inside and allowing people then to be able to work with her more directly. She really had to get through that litmus test. And I just want to be clear, Kelly and I have been working on this campaign for 20 years. Erica has been working with us for a decade. Angela's been working with us for 4 years. This film couldn't have happened any other way, and yet I don't know any other filmmaking team that would have ever done this with us. So it's been just an incredible honor and privilege. Yeah, and I will say my other hesitancy was, how in the world are you going to turn this into something that's entertaining and not the most depressing, horrible story? And that's where I think Erica and Angela were able to create a story arc, and they could see what maybe Kelly and I couldn't for being in the weeds. And I think in terms of editorial comment, I kept saying it has to be bigger than us. It has to be a story that's bigger than us, and just pushing and pushing. And in my mind, when I finally saw the very final cut, I was like, you know, Erica and Angela did it. They created a story that's, in my mind, an epic tale of how folks can come together and make a difference in the world, and that anyone can do that. And hopefully people find inspiration. And that's what I really wanted to see out of it. And it's just, you know, incredible low bow that they were able to do it and pull it off.
So, okay, Angela, Erica, how did it feel for you all to like show them the cuts of the film? Like, were you nervous? Like, you know, what was that feeling? Take us to that moment.
Well, you know, Kelly and Cynthia saw little snippets throughout the entire process, but it was, oh God. I mean, the first time that we showed, I think Cynthia, you and I were in San Francisco, and Angela and I were together when Kelly saw it for the first time as a film. It was a rough cut. I mean, I like couldn't eat for days. I was so nervous. I was so anxious. I don't know, Angela, if you were you so anxious too? We actually haven't talked about this in a while.
I mean, you were so anxious that I felt like it was my job to just make you feel less anxious. Any anxiety I had, I was like, she's feeling it way worse than me. So I just need to just be like, it's gonna be fine. It's gonna be great. You know, we showed it many times, but I will say for me, the most anxiety provoking time was when we had added in, there's sort of deposition footage of Kelly in the beginning of the film. And, you know, that was just a different kind of footage that is in the rest of the film. So I was most nervous about that because I had a sense of what that was bringing to the film, like how that was elevating the film. But at the same time, if Kelly wasn't comfortable with it, we'd have to take it out. So it was just that moment of like, and I wasn't sure if I would be comfortable with it if I was her. Like if she said, nah, sorry, I would have understood. So that was probably when I was most anxious myself.
Yeah, I remember, you know, sitting, so the feedback, first of all, I have to say Kelly and Cynthia both should give a master class on how to give feedback, because they delivered some very important messages with the utmost care and the utmost love for the project. And, you know, the feedback that was delivered, the notes that were delivered ultimately made the film so much better. And from the time that we showed the first rough cut to the time that it was actually finished was about 1.5 years. So from that point on, they saw multiple cuts. But seriously, Kelly and Cynthia, the process and how you approached Angela and I as artists was just really, really, really special.
Can I add something to that?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, you know, just like the people inside prison were vulnerable, Justice Now as an organization was really vulnerable. I mean, what we were doing was spectacularly peculiar in the nonprofit world and the organizing world. And we were constantly being looked at as if we sort of had 3 heads. You know, we lost we literally weren't given grants because we had our board members and our treasurer were people in prison. We were sort of looked down upon in the nonprofit world. And Erica came in and showed the most care and love with our organization, right? Part of it was not wanting us to be mocked and our movement to be mocked as well, but to really be embraced. And, you know, 10 years ago was a different moment than right now in terms of the civil rights moment. So just like Erica gave us that care, Kelly and me personally, and our movement care. I know after Kelly and I saw the rough cut and we were texting with each other and whatever, and trying to think of how to provide feedback, because we also wanted to provide that feedback, knowing that, you know, Erica had just invested 10 years of her life in building this film. Like, what would it be like to spend a decade on something and then someone just like watches it in an hour and rips the hell out of it, right? That would be just horrible. So it was humbling to be able to even give feedback. It was a sign of true love. And it was, it was, it felt like a huge responsibility to give that feedback. So we did work on it a lot. Yeah.
I just want to add something real quick, is that a lot of people, wait a minute, hold on, that's my mom. Oh, no, I'm on the Zoom call, Mom. Okay, so my mama said, what would you say? What you gotta say? I was like, okay, she was listening. Okay, so this is what I want to say, is that most people that I've heard who participated in documentaries walk away feeling exploited, used, just not appreciated, and edited it to get shock content, And so I just want to say that, like what Cynthia was saying about how we return the favor, is the fact that people concentrate on the masterpiece, on the art, on the finishing project, trying to be perfect, wanting to go after the awards or whatever, the recognition for this great piece of work. But I believe that the reason why so many people gravitated to the work is because it was truly humanity in the process of making it, that the humanity part of it was not lost. You get what I'm saying? And then here's the thing, and look at how, and also it helped to have that feeling of walking away from a project, even though it was 10 or 20 years in the making, feeling that it gave you something and that it didn't take away. So that's the reason why we promote Belly of the Beast the way we do. That's why we're here, we're showing up, we doing all that we can, and we're pushing it from whether it's from the administrative point of view, whether it's from the film crew, or if it's the subjects like me and Cynthia in it, is because it was the feeling that we all, the Justice Now members, it was the feeling that we all walked away with it, even if we didn't get the outcome at the end of the film that we were all waiting for and hoping for, but the internal outcome was so much more rewarding. So I just want to say that don't forget the humanity. For you filmmakers that's out there, don't forget the humanity in the filmmaking process.
I mean, I think that is what comes through in the film so much, and why I thought it was so powerful and beautiful when I saw it. Just like, it tells such a raw human story, and you feel for folks as you're watching it, and you don't feel like you're watching tragedy porn, because a lot of times when I watched a lot of abortion documentaries, it just feels like they're just like, oh, look at these poor people, that sucks for them, and it doesn't make you feel like you're looking down on people, rather than actually that they are just as smart and powerful. And it doesn't rely on like the stereotypes that we all are, the stigma that we're all swimming in about folks who are incarcerated. And I thought that was really beautiful. One of the things that I also found really powerful about the film is that there's what felt like this unprecedented way in which you're filming between outside and inside the prisons. And then of course it's a mix of like the deposition film and then interviews and all of that. I'd love to hear actually from all of you what that process was like, and were there challenges in trying to film inside? What were all of those challenges? I don't know, maybe Erica, you want to start, but I'd love to hear from all of you about that experience.
Yeah, I think for so many people, prisons are so far out of our sight, out of our minds, out of our consciousness, far from our physical reach. They're placed in locations where it's very difficult to access via public transportation, via transportation at all. And we are rarely granted access to worlds behind walls that aren't dramatized or sensationalized, as Kelly mentioned. So I really wanted to reimagine how we visualize imprisonment using imagery that contrasts confinement and freedom, really viscerally placing the audience in these incredibly vulnerable, uncomfortable spaces, like what it would feel like to be handcuffed to a gurney being wheeled into surgery, or what it would be like to have medical care in a prison doctor's office with your feet dangling from the exam room table, with all the power dynamics, you know, stripped of your rights, in a location where, you know, force is, you know, your daily existence. And, you know, our filmmaking team didn't have access to some of those spaces. So we chose to recreate, you know, agonizing over every little detail, trying to replicate what these spaces, what these moments in time would have smelt like, felt like. You know, and Kelly advised that process, and so many other people who are still inside right now advised that process, and really helped us recreate the medical world, the yards, this interior cells, outside contracted hospitals. And so I feel like this kind of combination of first person POV, obviously the deposition footage, cinema verite, and these recreations kind of helped collectively transport us into this world.
The only thing I'll add, because this is a panel that it's for the film community, is one of the things that we really had to decide fairly early on was what kind of storytelling, like what were the storytelling methods we were going to use. So when you're following a film over so much time, you know, a lot of it was, you know, Erica had just been there and she had, you know, gotten like, you know, our other producer to just film. And so we had kind of the verite footage, and we had a lot of different sort of sit-down interviews. But there came a point, kind of when I came on, was also a point where Erica was trying to think, okay, how can we make this more cinematic, as opposed to just kind of being a verite film, but not like a beautiful piece of cinema, you know? And that was kind of where the recreations came from. And also kind of thinking about the drone footage and all of that stuff to really kind of open up the film, and also make the location of California a character in the film too. There's some drone footage and just some kind of B-roll too. That was all to just make the film feel more like a movie in quotes. And that's something that we had to kind of be intentional about and get, you know, really think about, okay, what are those shoots that we're going to go on? How are we going to get that? How are we going to get access to the different things that we need to get access to film those things? And also, you know, there's a whole archival element to the film that, you know, we had some great archival researchers who also could help us figure out the exact things that we wanted to find, and the things that we could find and then had to design. So those are also some other pieces of the decisions of what went into the piece itself.
That's amazing. Oh, Kelly, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, just real quick. I think that really helped too, Angela, because it gave us some breathable moments. Because we go into, like you said, if those scenes were intense to watch for you, then imagine what we felt like living it every day. So the amount of anxiety, the amount of pressure, of oppression, and everything else like that we went through. And so I'm glad that it went from one standpoint of being in there and then taking us out to, like, whether if it was the tree, looking at the grass, the Central Valley, you know, agricultural area. It gave us some moments to come from out of the trauma, and gave us some breathable moments before we dive right back in there to tackle the issue. So
that's actually reminding me, Kelly, you gave us some of those notes when after watching it towards the end. It wasn't in the first cut, but it was towards the end when you gave us sections where you said, I really think that people need to digest this. And that it's pretty amazing to get notes on pacing and artistry that are so attuned to what the film needs.
Well, so we actually do have a question from the audience for you, Kelly. They want to know, so since your experience on the film, have you become interested in working in film in other ways, maybe directing and writing? Or do you have a documentary in the works?
So I did try my hand at something, right? In which I have a beautiful idea about it. Erica helped me. It was just us. We went like on foot. We was in the trenches of LA. And I actually did a small little 10-minute little documentary on women on the front line in LA. It's called Girls Like Me. It's on YouTube and everything is like that, but it's called Girls Like Me. It really kind of shows the work that we do and more support for women in intervention. Most intervention work in Los Angeles is dominated by men. And so it shows women on the front line of gangs, of sex trafficking, different things like that, homicides that happen in Los Angeles. And so I said that this will be good to do as a series, right? Like, look, and then grab people grab different women on the front line of different types of work, of either prevention or intervention. And whether if it's the city of Los Angeles, who knows, we might, go on, a little further than that. But I have tried my hand, and then she gave me full creative control. Yeah. She gave me full creative control. I'm like, I want this kind of music. I want this to happen. But her team is so bomb that they really are good in their craft, that when you give them something, they visualize it. I mean, I guess that's what they get paid for, but they visualize it, and then they was able to bring it to what I needed it to be. Yeah.
That is amazing. And I can't wait to see it at Sundance, on PBS, and everywhere else. But Kelly, actually, another question for you from the audience is, folks want to know, what is the work that you're doing now and how can they support it? Oh, you're on mute.
You're still muted.
Still on mute.
I'm sorry. I lost you for a minute. I was trying to tap back in.
The audience is wondering, can you talk a little bit about the work that you're doing now, and how they can support it?
Right. So thank you so much. So I do have my own organization called Back to the Basics. And what we do is that we do community events, in which some of it been shut down since COVID-19, but we've picked back up. I work with what we call proven risk. That's some of the language we use, the proven risk, meaning that those who have been in reentry already, kids who are already on probation, those who are already in the thick of things, not at risk, but already proven risk, and we give them education. We help them to navigate them to like life skill management, to understand and walk them through, and not such a therapeutic, like clinical therapeutic way, but just more so like local support, giving them the basic needs to succeed. Giving them resources, connecting them with local trades. I got relationships throughout Los Angeles City and County. And so I'm connected to the electrical trade union, the carpenter trade union, as well as the domestic violence centers and stuff like that. So navigating them to that area, but mostly what I do is education. We do life impact sessions based on all the things that should have broke us, the things that should have crushed us, and showing people how to gain the power back out of those situations and then recreate themselves and move forward. So that's what we do. So they can support it. They can support it a number of ways. Number one, we always, of course, can need funding. We do funding, we do donations, and usually those donations, we show like what we did. Like last recent donation, what I did was I actually bought, I think about 400 board games family board games because school was starting, and of course the kids are still locked up with COVID-19. And I actually distributed them to local elementary school kids, and also for the 5th grade graduating classes, right? So because just to give them a little bit of something like, we see you here, here's a few little things that you can have for your family. So it's just little things we do here and there, but it's also project based. So it's project based. So whatever the need is, whatever the project we come up with is what we use the funding towards. And so I'm proud of that.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you for your work, Kelly. That's amazing. I
Can
really
I
hope.
add something in?
Yeah,
Which
go
is
ahead.
that, you know, Kelly's moved on to greatness, which I think all of us always knew she would. And you know, Erica and Angela are going to move on to other projects, and I tend to float to where I feel like there's not enough social justice stuff happening. But one thing that we're also really committed to is to getting some level of accountability and acknowledgement of sterilization abuse, which is still ongoing in other prisons, in California's prisons even, and to help with that process of creating accountability so that there's a chance to stop this kind of state violence. We have a petition at the film's website, so you can go to bellyofthebeastfilm.com and sign a petition which is demanding that the state not only pay reparation to people who have been coercively sterilized, but also that they would have to notify people that they were sterilized. So it was almost a fluke that Kelly and I were able to figure out that she had been sterilized without her knowledge. And most of the sterilization abuse in California's prisons has happened during other abdominal surgeries or labor and delivery. So people literally don't know that they were sterilized. So the push we're doing is to have mandatory notification as well as reparations. And we desperately need your signatures. And we're all still helping and supporting that work too.
That's great. So everyone should go to bellyofthebeast.com, the film's website, and the petitions there.
bellyofthebeastfilm.com. Yep.
Okay, great.
Yep.
So we have a couple more questions, switching gears a little bit about filmmaking from the audience. So I'm going to combine a couple of them. So the film took, Erica, you've been working on this for like a decade, Angela for 4 years. So like it took a long time to film. Can you talk about what that timeline looked like? Was it raising money for the film? And then another person would like to know, how hard was it to find a home for your film and like get it distributed? And like, do you have any advice for folks who are kind of working on these longer timelines and what this looks like and how to not give up?
Yeah, in the very beginning stages of this film, the idea was to really document the incredible human rights documentation work that was happening inside prison and how it was being funneled out through this incredible underground network of activists. And that changed, really with the Center for Investigative Reporting. Kelly had come on board as an advisor behind the scenes. And when the Center for Investigative Reporting released their incredible series of articles, reporting done by Corey Johnson, who's also in the film, that really created this incredible momentum. For the first time, this was a national conversation. There was potential for legislation. And that was the moment that Kelly really got called back into the movement to testify. And that's when really the film started centering around Kelly's story and her relationship with Cynthia and kind of the fight to get this bill passed, and then the aftermath and the fight for reparations. So the film kind of changed course partway through, and also kind of behind the scenes, at the beginning of this process, funders didn't really believe this was going on. In fact, pretty much anyone that I spoke to didn't believe that this was going on, or they didn't care. And in 2013, that was the moment that funders really, one, had the validation because of the Center for Investigative Reporting, and two, were kind of forced to start caring about it because it was the moment when, this was going to be heard at a very large local, state, and national level. And so I'll let Angela talk a little bit more about that as well.
Yeah, I mean, I would say sort of also kind of the questions about the financial piece of it is, you know, it took sort of an initial grant from Tribeca Institute. And that grant, you know, it's the age old, you get one grant and then people see, okay, this is like a project that is out there and that is happening. And slowly, you know, we got another ITVS Diversity Development grant, which is a great development grant that people should look into. And then, you know, over time, we kept kind of getting more and more little grants. And a lot of that was just tied to, we would do a sort of a scene select, and then new things would happen and we would update the scene select. And as the scene select got better and better and better, I think people could really start to see that there was a film there. And that just kind of years, you know? And I also think everybody thinks that they're gonna make documentaries very quickly. And I've never worked on a film that has happened in under, like, I've never been on a film for under like 4 years. And that's just the way it goes. To really do this kind of storytelling, to make these social issue documentaries, it really requires time, and it requires distance too. So that's kind of part of why it really took all of that time. But Erica has produced or directed 2 films for Independent Lens. And I produced 2 films for Independent Lens. So we had a relationship with them and we were able to have a conversation with them. And all right, there's a lot going on behind the scenes. Yeah. We were able to have a conversation with them, and they came on to commission the project, which was really great. And we were able to partner with them. And we wanted to be on PBS because PBS is the only channel where people inside prison that they can watch, because, you know, it's not like people inside prison can watch Netflix. So that was really important for us that people inside could see the film.
The other thing I want to, oh, go ahead, Kelly.
I was just going to say, it also shows their integrity towards the population in which they were, you know, filming about, is the fact that, do we go over here where everyone can see it and we can get all this notoriety, or either do we go over here where the people can be most empowered and show their survivorhood, you know? So I just thought that just added to their integrity. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you, Kelly. I was going to say, one of the most challenging things in the process was trying to figure out how to open the film and how to end the film. And, you know, we didn't have an ending to the film at the beginning of 2019. You know, we had no idea how we were going to end the film. And we had reached out to Mary J. Blige. You know, we had asked all of our colleagues and friends inside prison, you know, if there could be one musical voice of the film, who would that be? And everyone hands down said Mary J. Blige. And Kelly has her own kind of story about Mary J. And how her music helped her through her time in prison. So we reached out to Mary J. Blige, having no idea what the ending of the film would be, but asking, could you write a song for the end of the film? And it was this incredible collaboration. It was just so serendipitous that at that moment, there was the reparations fight that was really getting traction, that we were having these incredible conversations with Mary J. Blige and her songwriting team, Nova Wave and DJ Camper, about how do we leave people with this film? Like, how do we leave them inspired to take action? And also, yet not wrap this up in a bow, as Kelly talks about at the end of the film. You know, how do you feel the weight of these heinous human rights abuses and yet be moved, inspired to action? And what you see at the end of the film is a result of a lot of synergy happening at the same time.
That is all just like so amazing. It was such a wonderful story. I had no idea that, you know, you could only get PBS in prison. Like, I mean, I obviously assumed there was some TV available, but that just, as Kelly's saying, that goes to just the integrity and care of who needs to see this film, who needs to be educated about it, and staying true to the people you're accountable to. And so I think that's just my hat's off to you, because that's really, really amazing. Wow. Actually, so Kelly, and maybe Erica, you want to answer this a little bit, but someone says they're a filmmaker in Mexico and they're working on their first documentary, and it follows several indigenous women who live under extreme poverty in rural areas of Mexico who are prosecuted for miscarriages. This person says, although I know them personally and we are close, talking about certain subjects in Mexico, especially in front of a camera, is extremely difficult. Do you have any suggestions on how to lead into an interview to make them feel more at ease? Like Kelly, what are ways that, Erica made you feel comfortable in doing this? And Erica, what are some ways that you really think about how you go into some interviews?
So I guess maybe some films may have deadlines, right? That they have to have a deadline to produce or to present something, maybe for funders or whatever. And so time is of the essence. But if you're trying to get a human story, we know humans are unpredictable and it takes cooperation, right? So for Erica, it took patience. Me and Erica met initially, and she had the camera right there and everything, and she was like, okay, Cynthia, sent me here. I was like, hold up. I was like, as I said, we was at Starbucks. She met me at Starbucks, but I said, hold up. I said, I need a friend. I need a friend right now. I'm overwhelmed. I'm broken. I'm hurt. And the story at the time was still in my throat. It was still in my throat. And I hadn't yet found the strength, the courage to bring it up. So you have to look at the fact that although on one hand, you want your participants to tell the story in order to gain the justice or the support that's needed, but at the same time, where is the psychology in it, in the fact that they're having to regurgitate trauma. You get what I'm saying? And so to regurgitate that. And sometimes, it gets stuck right here. And so, and then also it's the trust factor. What are you going to do with this, and how are you going to present me, right? And so there has to be levels of trust or either consistent meetings, or maybe meeting with them as a group, maybe doing some spiritual healing, sitting in on maybe a healing group type thing to talk about why it's so important that you tell your story, and then sitting in that moment and then gaining that spiritual trust, that internal trust, before you stick a camera in their face. You get what I'm saying? So I'm just saying, I'm not saying that may be your method, but I'm just saying for women who already feel like how I felt, in which I did not matter, that matters. For women who have already felt like that they have given up so much, and they have been so much have been taken away from them, you got to give something when you're asking them to give their story. You get what I'm saying? So I'm just saying that maybe that can help. And thank you so much for going down in the trenches. I call it in the trenches. We're going deep down in the trenches, because that's what Erica did. She got it. She put her hoodie on and went down in the trenches of the pen to get her story to the pen. Well, I said the pen, but the penitentiary, to get our story in prison. But thank you so much for doing that for the women who are survivors in Mexico. Thank you.
That's amazing. Erica, did you want to add anything?
I think Kelly said it all. We can move on to another question too.
Okay. Yeah. So another question is that if you've heard from other currently incarcerated folks who've seen the film, and like, what were their thoughts and what's the response been? And also, I'll tag onto that. Someone wants to know, is there a way that folks who are living on the inside are able to get involved? Are there printed materials that someone could send to an incarcerated person that they write with?
Thank you so much for that question. Everything about this film has been made every step of the way, you know, sending transcripts or trying to send transcripts and trying to get feedback about the process has been just imperative to our process. And so we notified people ahead of time about the broadcast through our connections, through a network of other activist organizations doing direct service work with people who are currently in prison. And I know that Cynthia and Kelly got a lot of responses as well from people inside, but through partner organizations that sent feedback, and also people who are film participants who are still incarcerated, or advisors kind of behind the scene, wrote in and just were completely awed by the film and how this is really provided an opportunity to discuss these issues more openly. And one of the beautiful things that came out of this was a book drive, a pandemic-inspired book drive. Essentially, people inside asked for additional resources on sexual health, mental health, reproductive health, and we were able to get this incredible groundswell of support from all over the US to send resources to people inside women's prisons. And that book drive is also on our website that you can check out.
Awesome. Thank you. So we only have like 3 minutes left. And so I wanted to do just like a quick rounding us out. I'd love to hear from each of you, you know, what do you hope folks gain from the film? And what do you hope they do next or take away from this conversation? Kelly, you want to start?
Yes. Since this is, you know, like this is about filmmaking, women in film, I do wish that everyone would take away just more so what I've expressed this whole time is just the survivors or the people that you're telling the story, just to make sure that you don't leave them feeling, you know, that you don't leave them feeling more empty than when you met them, or you know, that you will leave them feeling more empowered about participating in the film more than anything. So that's important for me. That's really important for me, that a person walks away empowered from the experience. So important for me. So that's what I want to do.
That's amazing. Cynthia, do you want to go next?
Sure. I think that I hope folks see what a team it took to make this film. Such an incredibly diverse on many different ways team across prison walls, different parts of the country, different backgrounds. And I think it's really testament to how much beauty can come and phenomenal work and change, social change can come from building diverse teams and working collaboratively. So I hope that, you know, I didn't even know how radical it really was, how Erica was approaching making this film. And I hope that other filmmakers start seeing that embedding oneself can actually make an even more beautiful final product.
That's amazing. Erica, do you want to go next?
Well, so it's so amazing that Kelly and Cynthia, you know, talked a little bit about the importance of the filmmaking process and kind of the hopes and dreams part of that. I think from a social impact perspective, you know, it's important to me that people understand that eugenics is alive and well, and that we will continue to see these human rights abuses until there's accountability. And we will continue to see the illegal sterilizations in places like the Georgia Detention Center come to light with courageous whistleblowers until there is accountability. And the key part of that accountability is reparations, as Cynthia mentioned. So just wanted to plug that one more time. Please sign the petition, go to bellyofthebeastfilm.com and share the trailer in this moment. I think it's really important that, you know, if you share the trailer, connect it to the history of eugenics, post about the film, find us, bellythebeastfilm.com, and stay in touch.
Awesome. And Angela, I'll let you have the last word.
Erica said literally, I kept coming up with, oh, I'm going to say that. Then she said it. Oh, I'm going to say that. Then she said it. Okay. You know, what I will say is many people see this film and had no idea that anything like this was happening. And, you know, we just ask that in all the ways that Erica mentioned, that you not only spread the word about the film, but really have conversations about what you learned in the film and just educate yourself more about reproductive justice in general. That's what we hope people can kind of take away from it.
Wonderful. Thank you all so much for this amazing conversation. I know I learned so much. I hope other people did too. Thank you for Women in Film for hosting it. I'll turn it right back over to EBONY.
Thank you, Renee, and thank you to all of you. I was shaken by so much of what was shared today. And Kelly, when you said the story was still in my throat, that's gonna stay with me. I, you know, honor your presence here today, and, you know, your reminder to the filmmakers in the audience who'll be watching this, not to leave people whose stories you are trying to help tell, not to leave them more empty than when you met them. I can't think of a more powerful message. Thank you so much for that. Erica, Angela, you are amazing filmmakers. Cynthia, thank you for being a steadfast social justice warrior, for staying in the trenches. Renee, you know I love the work that you do for reproductive justice. Girl, yes. We are going to be posting links to all of the organizations mentioned when we share the recording of this event. If you would like to get involved and you need to get involved, please check out those links, find out what these organizations are doing, find out how you can assist so that we can all be part of the change. There are things going on under our noses that we need to know about, and we need to be part of the change to get those things stopped and eradicated and help, you know, produce some healing for these people who have undergone these horrific human rights abuses. Thank you all again for being here today. I wish you the best of luck on this project as you continue to talk about it, everything that you're working on as you move forward. Thank you to everyone who's been watching us today, and we look forward to seeing you at our next Women in Film event. Thanks, everyone.